They told you he was a math teacher, a triangle guy, just another name in a dusty textbook. But they lied, because Pythagoras wasn't just a mathematician. He was a mystic, a philosopher, a cult leader, and one of the most dangerous thinkers in human history. He believed numbers were divine, that silence was a form of transformation, that the soul was immortal and would return again and again until you mastered it. And for the students who followed him, he demanded 5 years of silence before they were even allowed to speak his name. No talking, no questions, just listening, just discipline, just mastery. Pythagoras didn't want followers. He wanted initiates, men who were willing to suffer in silence, sharpen their minds like blades, and submit to a code so intense it outlived empires. Socrates said, "The unexamined life is not worth living," and Socrates was trained in the tradition Pythagoras built. This is not a video about math. This is a video about mental structure, about ritual, precision, stillness, and how a man who disappeared into silence still echoes through time today. If you've ever felt distracted, if you've ever felt pulled in every direction, if you've ever felt like your mind is leaking power every time you pick up your phone or speak without purpose, then this story is not history, it's prophecy. Because what Pythagoras taught wasn't equations, it was how to become a vessel for power, through discipline, through silence, through living by laws higher than society's noise. And it worked. For over 2,500 years, his ideas survived fires, invasions, and suppression. Even when his enemies tried to erase him, his code stayed alive. Why? Because Pythagoras didn't speak to the masses. He built a brotherhood of initiates, and in doing so, he wrote himself into time. Now, we go deeper, because the silence Pythagoras demanded wasn't about obedience. It was about what silence gives you, that noise can never provide. And if you want to understand the power of that silence, you need to watch this video all the way through, because by the end, you'll see how one man's discipline created a legacy stronger than any empire. Like the video, subscribe, and let this story remind you, you don't need more noise, you need a higher standard. Most people talk to be seen, to be heard, to feel like they matter. But Pythagoras, he believed speech was sacred and that most people used it carelessly. So if you wanted to study under him, you didn't get a workbook, you didn't get a robe, you got silence. 5 years of it. 5 years of waking up before the sun, eating minimal food, living by ritual, and not saying a word, not even to ask a question. He believed silence purified the mind, that in stillness, your thoughts either sharpen or disappear, that only through restraint could a man earn the right to speak. Most people are addicted to noise. They fear the silence because it forces them to listen to something they've avoided their whole life, themselves. But Pythagoras knew, a man who can sit in silence, a man who can delay expression, a man who can observe before reacting, that man is dangerous. This was no school. This was initiation, a ritual to strip away ego, comfort, and false urgency. And when the silence finally ended, when a student was permitted to speak, they did so with precision, with clarity, with a voice that had been tempered by years of inner fire. This wasn't about control. It was about preparation. Because Pythagoras wasn't just training thinkers. He was building transmitters, men who could carry and protect truth through centuries. And you don't give that kind of power to someone who can't sit still for 30 minutes without needing a screen, a snack, or a dopamine hit. Speech is the echo of the soul. If your soul is scattered, so is your voice. That's why most men today have no power when they speak, because they haven't earned their own attention, let alone anyone else's. Pythagoras understood this over 2,500 years ago, and instead of fighting the world's noise, He created an entirely different reality, one where stillness was law, where words were tools, not toys, where men trained their minds before ever opening their mouths. That's the discipline you were never taught, and that's the power that's waiting in the silence you keep avoiding. Next, we enter the world he built, the Brotherhood of Pythagoras, where silence became strategy and ritual replaced chaos. Most philosophies die in books. Pythagoras built a living code. He didn't just teach ideas, he embodied them. And then he created a secret brotherhood to protect them. A society so disciplined and private, most of what we know about it had to be reconstructed from fragments, because what happened inside was never meant for the masses. This wasn't just a group of thinkers, it was a movement, bound by ritual, silence, mathematics, and moral law. They woke up early, ate only what was necessary, wore simple clothes, spoke rarely, and only with intention. They lived like monks, but they thought like strategists. They called themselves the mathematikoi, not just mathematicians, but those who are disciplined to learn. To join them, you had to pass tests, not of knowledge, but of character. Can you go years without speaking, without breaking? Can you follow a code, even when no one is watching? Can you restrain your ego long enough to earn understanding? They believed in reincarnation, that your soul had lived before and would return again until it remembered its true form. They treated the number 1 as divine and believed the entire universe could be expressed through ratios, harmonies, and sacred geometry. This wasn't math for tests. This was math as a mirror to reality itself. Inside this brotherhood, there was no competition, only refinement, no need for fame, only the pursuit of what they called cosmos, order, clarity, inner and outer alignment. They believed every number had a soul, and every man had a frequency. If you could attune yourself to the structure of reality, you became more than human. That's what made them dangerous, because they didn't need power. They became power, and that made kings nervous. Eventually, their enemies rose. Their school was burned, many were killed, and Pythagoras himself. Some say he escaped, some say he vanished, others say he let the destruction happen, because his code was already planted in the minds of the few who were ready. This wasn't a cult, it was a code. And now, you've seen the outer layers, but the question remains, why did they believe the universe was built from numbers, and how did that belief make them so mentally unshakable? To Pythagoras, numbers weren't just tools, they were living truths. They weren't created, they were discovered, woven into the very structure of reality. 1. The point, unity, origin. 2. The line, polarity, tension. 3. The triangle, balance, stability. 4. The square, foundation, matter. Each number had a meaning, a frequency, a soul. Most men saw math as measurement. He saw it as revelation. He believed the entire cosmos moved in mathematical harmony, that music, color, thought, even morality could all be reduced to vibrational ratios. The same way a harp string resonates when struck, your thoughts vibrate, your emotions pulse, your choices ripple. He called this the music of the spheres, a belief that even the planets move in silent song. And the man who could attune his life to that rhythm would be unshakable. Man is the microcosm, the universe, the macrocosm, and harmony is the bridge. In a world ruled by chaos and emotional noise, Pythagoras offered something terrifyingly clear. There is structure, there is order, and your soul either aligns with it or decays. Today, men chase stimulation. He chased resonance. Today, men react. He refined. That's why Pythagoras wasn't worshipped in his time. He was feared, because a man who sees the structure behind everything can't be manipulated by anything. Not emotion, not fame, not fear. Because he's moving to something deeper. And that's the lesson most miss. It's not about numbers. It's about pattern recognition. It's about asking, what are you repeating every day? What vibrations are you feeding your mind with? What noise have you confused for truth? Because your life, right now, is just a reflection of your internal math. Chaotic input equals chaotic results. Harmony requires clarity, precision, discipline. That's what Pythagoras understood, not as philosophy, but as law. Now you understand the code. But there's still one final truth left to uncover. Why did Pythagoras reject fame, walk away from recognition, and disappear from the world, just as he was becoming legendary? The answer: it's the secret to why his legacy survived everything. And that's where we go next. Most men chase recognition. They want applause, followers, validation. But Pythagoras, he vanished, just as his name was spreading, just as his ideas were catching fire. He didn't write books. He didn't sign his theorems. He didn't seek a stage. He left a brotherhood behind and walked into silence. Why? Because Pythagoras wasn't building a personal brand. He was building immortality. Fame is for men who want to be remembered. But legacy is for those who refuse to be forgotten. He knew the truth. The louder you become, the more diluted your message gets. And in a world that rewards noise, he doubled down on discipline, mystery, and sacred transmission. His name wasn't passed through scrolls. It was passed through initiation, from man to man, not for followers, but for successors. That's why his teachings survived centuries of suppression, because he didn't tie them to his ego. He tied them to principles. In the modern world, fame is currency, but Pythagoras saw it for what it was, a trap, because when you need to be seen, you start changing your message to please the crowd. You soften, you dilute, you entertain, and in doing so, you kill the truth. Pythagoras rejected all of it. He chose silence over spectacle, structure over spotlight, and that decision gave him what fame never could: control of his message, control of his code, control of how it would echo across time. And here's the most powerful part. He wasn't remembered because he chased legacy. He was remembered because he lived like a man who already had one. He didn't ask the world to remember him. He became a man the world couldn't forget. You've seen the silence. You've seen the code. You've seen the brotherhood. But now, it's your turn. In the final chapter, we bring it all together. You're not here for a history lesson. You're here because something in you recognizes it's time to move differently. So here's the truth. You don't need to live in ancient Greece. You don't need to join a secret brotherhood. You don't even need to be a philosopher. But you do need a code, because in a world drowning in noise, distraction, and false identity, a man without a code is nothing but drift. Pythagoras didn't become immortal by accident. He did it through silence, ritual, structure, restraint. He removed the unnecessary and became unshakable. And you can steal that. Here's the 4-step blueprint for how you can apply this to your life right now. 1. Reclaim silence. Create a window every day, even just 10 minutes, where there is no phone, no talking, no input. Let your thoughts sharpen. Let the discomfort rise. Let the chaos burn off. The man who can sit in silence becomes harder to control. 2. Set a daily ritual, not a routine. A ritual. Do something every single day with intention. Stretch, train, read, cold shower, breathe. It's not about the act. It's about the discipline. Your nervous system must learn. We are not average. 3. Speak less and speak like a blade. Start eliminating filler words. Pause before answering. Let your words land. When you speak, let it feel like a decision, not a reaction. Power lives in the man who doesn't need to speak to prove it. 4. Build a code. Write it down. 5 rules or 10. Doesn't matter. But live by something higher than impulse. Because without a code, you will revert to comfort. And comfort kills memory. You want to be remembered? You want to feel alive again. You don't need followers. You don't need algorithms. You don't even need applause. You need alignment. The kind Pythagoras lived and died for. He didn't chase fame. He built a system. He didn't argue. He initiated. He didn't boast about his legacy. He became the kind of man whose very existence could not be erased. So what do you take from Pythagoras? You take the silence, the structure, the patience, the fire. You take the idea that the loudest man is rarely the most dangerous, and you take that into your life like a weapon. Not to impress, but to fortify. Most men want to be seen, but the rarest men, they build something that makes them unforgettable, even in silence. You've heard the legend, you've seen the path. Now ask yourself, will you keep watching from the shadows, or will this be the moment you step forward and become the myth they whisper about? This is Deionos. Subscribe, watch, awaken, and carry the silence with you until the world can feel your presence, even when you say nothing.